In the original James Bond clip, a small watch-powered laser can be seen melting through the floor of an armored train. However, this isn't any normal train, as it has
1-inch armor plating.
As no household laser is able to cut through metal, 5 colors of paper, white, yellow, green, brown, and black, were used. If the strips of paper are shot with a beam of laser light, then the lighter colored ones will burn slower than the darker ones. Originally, metal foils were going to be used, but when they were tested for the first time, well...
2,000 years later.
But back to the experiment. For each test, 5 1-inch strips of each color paper were cut. Then they were placed on the center of the laser target and secured. The laser was fired, and the number of passes it took to cut through the paper was recorded. The results of this experiment clearly show that the lighter colored paper strips, white and yellow, required many more passes than the darker ones, black, brown, and green. From the earlier test results, it is clear that the laser is most effective in the color black. In the movie clip, the steel flooring also appeared black. Black paper took on average 5.8 passes to completely cut through it. A single sheet of paper is 0.0039 inches thick, so it takes about 256 sheets of paper to match the thickness of the 1-inch armor plating on the rail car. Steel is also 6.8 times more dense than paper. For the purposes of this experiment, I assumed it would take 6.8 times more passes to cut through a similar thickness of steel. Additionally, steel is much more reflective than black paper. About 5% of the total light energy will be reflected by the paper, leaving 95% of the energy to be cut. When cutting steel, on the other hand, only 20% of the light energy is used, and 80% is reflected. For the purposes of the experiment, I am calling 20% the efficiency factor of the laser. So far, the answer to this equation would be 69,632 passes. To make this a little bit easier to understand, we will multiply the number of passes by 2.532, the approximate amount of time it takes for one pass to go over the paper. We now have the number of seconds it would take to cut through the piece of steel. Giving Mr. Bond a bit of slack, we will assume that inside the watch there is a 5-watt laser and enough battery for it to run for extended periods of time. Because a half-watt laser was used in the experiment, the amount of seconds must be divided by 10, because 1/2 times 10 equals 5. In the end, with a 5-watt laser, it would have taken Mr. Bond over 3 hours to cut through only 1 inch of steel. Assuming that the hole James Bond cut through was 24 by 24 inches, then the total area to be cut would be 96 inches. Because of this, the previous answer was multiplied by 96 to get the amount of time that would be needed to cut through 96 inches of steel plate. To further prove this myth wrong, the other colors, white, brown, green, and yellow, were also put through this equation. Because it would have taken over 300 hours to cut through the steel, this dangerous myth is hereby declared busted.